Righty, we got the main speaker arrived. That's great. Thank you, sir.
I'm pleased to be here.
So I started talking. I definitely seen Dr. John's presentation several times right now. We went through uh, I did not go through his certification program. I did not had a chance yet. The life is super busy and super tight, but I am so happy to recommend his program to any security manager, anybody in an organization that really want to open up that bottleneck and really resolve problems. You can resolve violence right now with the solutions that Dr. John provides, and it is done through a great certification and training programs. So I'm gonna turn off my view and I'm gonna allow you, sir, to really go through your keynote. I really
Well,
wanna ask a few more questions, just follow-up questions after that. But when you're gonna start, I'm gonna really move my setup so I can sit down and we can have a conversation. So otherwise, I'm really looking
well,
forward to you speaking up on our media channels, and I see
you need, yeah,
that.
you need to give
Yeah,
me host
that's
privileges.
I just noticed that that was on a different screen. So so now you do have that, sir. So you should be able to share.
All right. Can you see my slide?
We can see your slides, and uh, yes, thank you very much.
All
So
right. Let me
for
just,
those, yeah, that's really the way to really spread the message. What I'm trying to do, sir, with this, we're streaming this on YouTube right now. We'll cut this into specific sections within our ecosystem. So you got a great lead magnet for your practice. You also have a kind of I'm gonna say it, digital presence that hopefully we're gonna be able to amplify
Mhm.
your knowledge throughout many other companies, and I hope generations that will be coming in. So thank you, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Andy. It's a pleasure to be with you here and share with your audience our findings and how they can be applied in the real world today, whether we're talking about workplace or we're talking about in our own homes or in our society at large. Uh, I am Dr. John Byrnes, founder and CEO of the Center for Aggression Management, and a proud Navy veteran on the first nuclear-powered submarine, something I'm quite proud of. Many of my friends say that I still glow at night. So um, I'm here to introduce you to CAPS, the Critical Aggression Prevention System. And the first thing I'm going to tell you is going to sound off the cuff, a little absurd. I'm going to tell you that I'm going to share something with you that literally doesn't exist outside of our work. And that seems a little absurd, realizing how many bright people there are on the planet. How can that possibly be? Well, that's frankly because we started at a very unique place, which I will demonstrate in this journey we're going to take together today. We started at a very unique place, which has taken us down a very unique path that literally nobody else sees. And you're going to see it here today. And because of that, we arrive at solutions that literally nobody else has. All of this will come to value to you. You will see it for yourself. You'll make your own judgments. And based upon that, you will see something of value here in this process. So let's get our slides working right here. Yes, so I'm going to share something with you that on its face is going to sound a little absurd because I'm going to tell you that I have something that is different than any other program that is on the planet. So we'll start here. If I'm speaking with an employer, I'll often say to that employer, if I were to take 50 random employees and place them before you, could you, with scientific reliability, and incidentally, because I use that phrase, scientific reliability, I'm going to dedicate an entire slide to precisely what that means. So could you, with scientific reliability, identify the precursor behaviors that go with escalation and or violence, but also insider threats, which is a key issue within cybersecurity today, sexual harassment, abuse, bullying in our schools, which is pervasive in our schools, discrimination, and of course, violence itself. And by virtue of those precursors, get out in front and actually prevent these incidents from occurring? The answer clearly is no. However, during this journey today, I'm going to tell you how you can do exactly that with scientific reliability. You will see for yourself as we go through this process. So how does this thing work? Well, the federal threat assessment, along with the FBI and Secret Service, have for years said we can prevent violence by identifying someone on the path to violence. By identifying someone on the path means you're out in front of and gives you the ability to identify the precursors and therefore get out in front and prevent this violence from occurring. We call that path the sequential successive precursors to violence. And these precursors enable us not only to get out in front of violence, but insider threats, sexual harassment, abuse, bullying, and discrimination. And thus, it gives us the ability to get out in front before someone has become defensive. Now, that's a critical aspect. The moment someone feels threatened that based upon an accusation that they are going to be at risk, they become just that, defensive. You lose your opportunity for rapport and trust and cooperation. That all of that is lost. So it is important for us to get out in front of that and in order to be able to redirect someone in a constructive and positive way. And all of this enables us to do this, again, with scientific reliability, but also without violating privacy regulations. That's huge. That's unprecedented. We'll show you how as we go forward. But before we go forward, we need to just spend a moment on mental health assessments and psychological evaluations. If we listen to the media, all we have to do is be psychologically evaluated or mental health assessed, and we wouldn't have these problems. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. After the horrific shooting at Virginia Tech, you may remember 32 people lost their lives that day. The president got together the brightest minds in our country, including the FBI and Secret Service, and they came to the following conclusion. Most people that are violent do not, I say, do not have mental illness. And most people that have mental illness are not violent. In fact, the shooter at Virginia Tech, Sung-Hee Cho, was mental health assessed 3 different times. And in each and every occasion, he was deemed to be depressed and anxious, but not, I repeat, not at risk of hurting himself or others just before he murdered 32 innocent people. Not far from where I am in Orlando, Florida, the home of Mickey Mouse, was the horrific Parkland shooting. Nicholas Cruz, the shooter, was mental health assessed by the Florida Department of Family and Children and deemed to be, you got it, not at risk of hurting himself or others just before he murdered 17 innocent souls. Lastly, I want to introduce you to Jared Lee Loughner. You may remember he was the guy who shot Congressman Gabrielle Gifford, and thank God she survived that day. What you may not remember was that 6 people lost their lives in that incident that day. Now, here's a guy who clearly had a thought disorder. He was probably schizophrenic, one of the scarier of mental illnesses. But ladies and gentlemen, we know that of all schizophrenics, 0.3%. Now, that's not 0.3, that's 0.3% of schizophrenics have murdered another human being. So, how do we get from 0.3% to this is your next murderer? You can't. That's been the problem all the way along. Mental health assessments, psychological evaluations are far too subjective. They're notoriously inaccurate, as we pointed out here, and they can violate HIPAA regulations. Therefore, clinical assessments are inherently subjective, constrained by confidential protections, and are not designed for continuous behavioral monitoring, which is necessary if we're going to identify these individuals. As a result, mental health assessments are not scientifically reliable, nor are they scalable in a mechanism that can prevent escalating harm of conduct. So, what you're going to find out is these, and you'll see for yourself, these are human-based precursors. In other words, if you're addressing a human, they will apply no matter where you are on this planet, no matter what culture, gender, education, age, sexual orientation, or religion, these will apply because they're human-based. They're also grounded in human observations. These are common sense, ladies and gentlemen, and that's why it's so easy to apply them, no matter what the circumstances. I'm often asked, how much education do you need to do this system? Not very much. If you've lived life at all, these things make sense, so they're easy to understand, they're easy to learn, and they're easy to apply in real time. Next. We do not use mental health assessments nor psychological evaluations for all the reasons we've just mentioned in the previous slide. So we do not rely on protected characteristics like culture, gender, age, education, sexual orientation, or religion. So, ladies and gentlemen, we do not violate nor contravene HIPAA in our hospitals and healthcare, FERPA in our schools, the granddaddy of them all, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, or the new kid on the block, that's probably the most abrasive of all the privacy rights, the European Union's GDPR. We do not violate any of these. So why is that so important to understand? What we can do that literally nobody else can, we can record and track aggressive behavior as we define it, as you'll see here, with a proportionate manner and with a certain impunity. That is unheard of. So how do we implement this? How do we operationalize this? It's really very simple. There are only 3 components to it. 2 are training, 1 is software. So what are the trainings? We can and do train all people with all skills. However, most organizations want a 2-tiered system. So we start with what we call aggression first observers. These are people on the front lines of aggressive behavior. They see it all the time. These are your HRs, these are your security, these are pursers who handle money, these are people that are confronted by aggressive behavior. And we teach them what? Not subjective references. We teach them objective, measurable observables of human-based aggression. Let me let that sink in for a moment. Objective, measurable observables of human-based aggression. And we teach them how to put that into an app so that that information will get to the next level, which we call certified aggression managers. These are people further trained to engage, diffuse, but most importantly, to redirect. That redirection is a critical component of our training and our system. I will go into a lot more detail about what that means in a future slide, because that is a critical part to all of this. Thirdly, we tie it all up in a bow with what we call the meter of emerging aggression. This is the software platform portion of it. It is both mobile and computer based, and it enables us to forensically record and longitudinally track all aggressive behavior over space and time. And we do that with a CAPS mobile app and a CAPS dashboard, all of which you will see in some detail as we continue on with this journey. So what was it that we discovered 30 plus years ago? See this gray hair? It's well earned. So we discovered there were two kinds of aggressive behavior. One we call primal aggression, the other we call cognitive aggression. Primal aggression is built on the primal instincts of fight or flight. This is normally what people see as aggressive behavior. It is, again, based upon the primal instincts of fight or flight. It is fueled by adrenaline, that connection between aggression, the production of adrenaline, the increase in the heart rate, and the resulting body language and behavior that we can both observe visually, but we can also measure it. When I was working with the military, we were using infrared. If we could get a square inch of skin, we could identify a person's pulse rate remotely and watch it go up and down based on the stimuli. This is hard science. But it represents someone losing control, doesn't it? Because it's the adrenaline rush. The higher on the scale, the more loss of control, right? So what are we observing? In the worst case scenario, we meet what I like to call the red-faced, ready to explode guy. This is what most people see as aggressive behavior. This is a person that is out of control. They've lost complete control of themselves. So if this represents someone losing control, what about conscious and deliberate aggression? Does it fit? No, it does not. So we searched the universe. We came upon a professor in Austria, developed what he called a conflict model. It was academic, it was convoluted, but it was well-researched, peer-reviewed. So I simplified it, put it alongside of primal aggression, and we developed what we call cognitive aggression. Cognitive aggression is conscious, deliberate aggression, or non-conscious, in that someone repeats it so often that they no longer give a lot of thought and they become a vicious person. We know people like that, right? The evil person. So this is a person who is conscious and deliberate or non-conscious because they've done it so often, they no longer give aggression any thought. They just do it. This is fueled by intent, the intent to do harm to another human being. We can refer to it as hostile intent or malicious intent, or sometimes it's referred to as malintent for short. But it is simply the intent to do harm to another human being. There are many levels of this, and we'll get into this. But the first grouping are the victimizers. So we simply ask the question, what is your intent with this person or persons? Is it in your interest and theirs, therefore a win-win as it ought to be? Or is it in your interest and to their detriment? In other words, you're going to victimize this person. You're becoming a victimizer. Now, 30 years ago, the word victimizer was not even in the Webster's dictionary. So we had to create that language. And as we started to create and realized we were creating new language, we started to copyright and trademark all this language. Now, why is it important? Sure, ownership is good. We have a wonderful thing called intellectual property. But for anyone else to get anywhere near where we are, they have to step on our language. Nobody's doing this. Nobody is anywhere near where we are. So all of the values that I'm going to share with you from here on out do not exist outside of primal and cognitive aggression. Incidentally, when we put primal and cognitive aggression together, suddenly we got a gestalt where the result was greater than the sum of its parts. In other words, suddenly we realized that all of the body language and behavior that we've all known about since the beginning of human history fell into place and became empirical, which enabled us 10 years ago to take this to Eastern Kentucky University, where we got it scientifically validated as reliable. Now, again, I've got a whole slide dedicated to that explanation, so I'll get to that in more detail. But the key is that suddenly all of this body language and behavior that we've been guessing about, that kind of floats out there somewhere, and we're trying to grasp straws by it, now falls into place and becomes empirical. So as we look now, understand that I'm going to share with you our continuum, and there you'll see a baseline and 9 stages of aggressive behavior, both primal and cognitive. But in groupings, as you see here, the first grouping are the victimizers. Now, these are often a personality flaw. These are people who often don't even see themselves as aggressors. They see themselves as ordinary people, but they're creating victims, like the inconsiderate person. The inconsiderate person who creates victims, and because of it, they are aggressors. So even though they may not see themselves as aggressors, they are aggressors. This, you're going to find, is a very important ingredient to our whole system, because it enables us to get out in front, well out in front. These are way below the radar. Nobody sees these. And our ability to identify these behaviors enable us to get out in front of much more horrific, and you'll see that kind of behavior as we get into it for a few more slides. The next grouping are the predators. They want what you have, but they don't want to give you value for it. Maybe you're the leader of a group, and they want to be that leader instead of you. So instead of trying to work up to it and build and earn that, they want to undermine you. So they're going to aggress against you, to undermine the trust relationship you have with your team, and then begin to move them against you to the point where they can step in and take over for you by aggressing against you. Or what you have, and what do? They simply steal it from you. That's called criminal intent. And that too is very bad things to do. That's aggressive behavior. So the highest level, the 9th-stage cognitive aggressor, is the perpetrator of murder, suicide, or terrorist. Let me introduce you to Zachariah Moussaoui, often known as the 20th hijacker. And a quick glance at these 2 facial expressions, you can see they're quite different, can't you? You see, most people, most security, most law enforcement, most people, HR and all rest, look at the person at the top and think that person's the most lethal person. But the guy on the bottom is far, far more lethal. You see, once again, we've discovered that no matter what your culture, gender, education, age, sexual orientation, or religion, if you're a human being and you rise to the intention, not motive, intention, where you're prepared to give up your life for a cause, your body will respond to that intention by losing animation. In essence, your body's going to say, I'm dead, and it takes on that look. The military call it the 1,000-yard stare. Others call it dead eyes. Others refer to a loss of forehead expression. There's a host of different, but the bottom line is you start to get these facial expressions that are unique to the intent of this person. And there's no way they can hide from it, because it is their intention that brings on this look. And it is not merely facial expressions. Their whole body language and behavior lose animation. So the Israelis call it the walking dead. And this enables us to get out in front, because here's the key. Here's why it's so important. There's a phrase called the moment of commitment. The moment of commitment is that moment when an assailant decides to pull that weapon and start shooting. From that decision to when the first round is discharged is just 2 seconds. No security, no law enforcement, no matter how well trained or equipped, can reliably be on scene in 2 seconds. So, ladies and gentlemen, you're on your own. If you think security or law enforcement is going to save you, I'm sorry, that isn't going to happen. By the time they arrive, they're going to do what is referred to as active shooter response. That sounds very nice, but is it? Active shooter response presupposes an active shooter already murdering your employees, already murdering your students and teachers, already murdering those people in your community. That, to me, is unacceptable. So I'm going to share with you right now how you get out in front of that horrific moment of commitment. Here's how. You have first observers in your parking lots or your parking garages. You have them placed throughout your community. These are individuals who are trained to identify aggressive behavior and be able to put it into a system that instantly works and enables someone, because if someone is driving up to find a parking spot with this look, you may only have moments, but you have moments. You're no longer reacting, you're acting in a, again, limited amount of time, but you have an advantage here to get out in front and prevent it. And as you learn more about this system, you're going to learn the earlier you identify this behavior, the easier it is to engage and diffuse and redirect this individual. So what you're seeing before you is the continuum of aggression. You will see that it goes from a trigger phase right up through the 9th stage of aggression. You have primal aggression here on the right. You have cognitive aggression here on the left. So I'm going to share with you what I call the prevention gap. So when do you suppose most people report? Now understand, because when someone is reported, that means that someone is going to get some kind of a punishment. And I'll go into that in more detail. But because people are going to be punished, the people who typically observe this kind of behavior don't want to turn them in unless there is a clear and obvious threat to they or others. So when do they normally get reported? Right here. Stages 7, 8, or 9. That's when they get reported. In fact, even our federal government, the Criminal Justice Information Services, the most recent version 6.0, talks about a high-risk protocol. You discover someone who is a direct threat. That's 7, 8, or 9. In other words, what the federal government uses as a way of preventing some, their version of prevention, is identifying someone planning or preparing for an attack. That is 7, 8, and 9. That's when you begin to see those things happen. What are they missing? They're missing 0 through 6. So let's take a look at what 0 through 6 looks like. On the primal aggression, we'll look at that first. You have, remember, this is adrenaline driven, you have triggers. Triggers are little explosions that go off in our heads. We all experience them. You get up late for work. You go in for coffee and breakfast, and there is none. Now your stomach is grumbling. You get 3/4 down the driveway to head to work, and you realize it's garbage day and you forgot the garbage. You jam on the brakes, grab the garbage cans, drag them to the street. Now you get into morning traffic, and someone cuts you off. Ladies and gentlemen, we all are exposed to this kind of behavior. But what's the difference? Ladies and gentlemen, we cope. We cope. As long as we're coping, everything is copacetic, right? As long as everything is copacetic, everything is just fine. However, when we stop coping, When one trigger begins to build on top of the next trigger, we enter into what we call the escalation phase and what we term mounting anxiety. Excuse me, mounting anxiety changes us. It changes our body language. It changes our behavior. It changes the way we communicate with each other. We can identify these changes and we can identify them early on. Excuse me. So we're already seeing that we can identify people not at stage 7, but at stage 1 as they transition from normal behavior into stage 1 primal aggression behavior. The next thing I want to share with you is that you'll see a low risk, a moderate risk, and a high risk. That's on both sides of this equation, primal and cognitive. Why is this? Well, why is it when we have hundreds of people saying thousands of times, if you see something, for gosh sake, say something, why is that not reliable? Well, it's really very simple, frankly. Humans tend to do what they perceive as in their best interest. Is that a fair statement to make? Yeah, it is. Humans tend to do what they perceive is in their best interest. They don't perceive getting involved as in their best interest, and they don't. That's why it typically gets to 7, 8, or 9 before anybody gets actually reported. So what's the difference here? How does this system change it? Well, first thing you can see is that it's progressive. So we can see someone going from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3. So we can actually see someone escalating right before us. Also, when they go from 3 to 4, they're not just going from 3 to 4, they're going from low risk green to moderate risk yellow. And they can begin to see that if they don't report it, then they could be at risk if something turns into an incident. But most importantly, they can see that if they don't engage in stages 1, 2, and 3, when it is the easiest to engage and redirect someone, and they don't, someone could become a 7, 8, or 9, and they could become a victim of assault or violent behavior. So you see, this changes the paradigm. And this change in paradigm, I've seen work repeatedly over the past 30 plus years. The next question I want to ask is, we call it in general terms maladaptive behavior. These are destructive kinds of behaviors that affect productivity, profitability, all of the things that are important in a community, in a workplace environment, but in a community that mutual, let's all get together and build together something much better, whether it's on our own family, block to block, or in our community at large. These behaviors, whether they're destructive conflict, sexual harassment, abuse, bullying, discrimination, or insider threats, all begin at the 4th stage of cognitive or intent-driven aggression. Now, the first thing I want to point out is our society has it wrong. There's a thing called conflict resolution. Most people have heard about this. If you're HR or security, you're taught it. If you're supervisor or management level, you're taught about it. Why? Because it's supposed to prevent escalation or violence, right? Wrong. Doesn't conflict resolution presuppose conflict? It does. You can't resolve something that doesn't exist, right? So because we are reacting to conflict, we're not preventing it. We are reacting to conflict. There is already a victim, isn't there? There is already a perpetrator, isn't there? And there's therefore already a cost, both human and financial, to any business. And if it's in our community, block to block or whatever, there's a cost to the family. or to our society. So this system does not prevent anything. And are there individuals, ladies and gentlemen, who will express their conflict with violence? Aren't we already seeing that on college campuses and our urban streets? We are. These are people in conflict with each other who are expressing that conflict with violence. So if you truly, truly want to prevent violence, don't you have to get out in front of conflict? Conflict resolution, de-escalation already presupposes someone already escalating, and you're trying to de-escalate. These things do not prevent anything. They react to them. Also, the same goes for sexual harassment. Doesn't sexual harassment represent someone exhibiting sexual harassing behavior? Doesn't abuse represent someone exhibiting abusing behavior? Bullying in our schools is pervasive. Doesn't it already represent someone exhibiting bullying behavior and discrimination the same, insider threat the same? So all of these maladaptive behaviors, we are merely reacting to them. But with CAPS, we have something unique, something that nobody else has. Why? Remember those things that were below the radar? Let's take a look. We have the prevention precursors. These are the things that are way below the radar. Nobody is seeing them, but we're teaching. These are very subtle things, ladies and gentlemen, but we're teaching people how to identify them, how to engage and redirect these people. This is a very important ingredient. Now, can we rely 100% on body language and behavior? The answer, of course, no, we can't. So we develop what we call the judicious interview. The judicious interview uses scientific cause and effect principles. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hear this over and over again because this system is founded in science. That's one of the reasons it makes it so easy. You don't have to have years and years of opinion building or lots of credentials next to your name. Virtually any person can use this system effectively because we're using scientifically reliable indicators of a human-based aggression. So what are we doing? These are, so what are we observing? We're observing body language and behavior that all humans exhibit. If someone's intention is to harm, they will exhibit body language and behavior that we can identify. So what we're going to give you is those body languages and behaviors. So you can begin to see this emerging aggression even before it becomes an incident. Now, there are some other programs that are kind of primal aggression driven in the fact that they're driven based upon pulse rate or some other item like this. They're nowhere near as well defined as ours is, but literally no one has cognitive intent driven aggression. And as I said, when we put these two together, we got a gestalt, and now we've evolved this whole system, as you're beginning to see it here, in a way that literally no one else has. So now we're to the crisis phase. What do we see on the primal aggression side? What would you expect to see on someone who's losing control due to the adrenaline rush? We're seeing someone who's spiraling out of control into panic and or rage. Can this person be lethal? Of course they can. But typically this person is not a premeditated person. Why? Because they're adrenaline driven. This is the man who comes home from work early, finds his wife in bed with his best friend, the weapon's right there on the counter, he shoots and kills both people. This is not well thought out. This is, again, adrenaline-driven aggression. We also learn from that typically it's quite easy to diffuse a primal aggressor because, again, they're adrenaline-driven. So by simply removing the object of their anxiety, we can begin to cause that person to diffuse. Now, before I get to cognitive aggression, I want to talk for just a moment about executive protection. After the horrific shooting of United Healthcare's Brian Thomas, and the occult following of his assassin, CEOs across our land are wanting to know how they can get better protection. I have had the honor of working with true legends in executive protection. And what I've learned from all of this is that they, once like the government itself, they see prevention as identifying someone who's planning or preparing for an attack. Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is stages 7, 8, and 9. They're missing 0 through 6, which means they're having to act very rapidly at the spare of the moment. And here's the problem. Executive protection, they only have two options. One is to do nothing, and the other is to effect a takedown. No executive wants a takedown done. Why? Because it can wind up on social media or the 6 o'clock news, and they don't like that. So it puts them in a very difficult place. This is why one of the greatest of all executive protections, Jerry Glazebrook, had me come in and train his teams. He now protects the wealthiest of families on the planet, not just in the US. And in that group, I trained them for 2 days, was Bob Dugan of Executive Security International, ESI, who's for the last 30 plus years trained people for 28 days. And at the end of that 28 days, you become certified to go to the hotspots of the world, like Afghanistan or Iraq, and protect families there at the highest level possible. So, but once again, the reason they had me come in, oh, and incidentally, as a last point of order, when Walmart did the very first, they produced the very first Protective Services Conference at their headquarters. They sponsored it. They had the wealthiest of wealthy families, then all the names like the Dells and all the rest, the Microsofts that you've heard about before were all there. I was their keynote speaker because understanding the difference between primal and cognitive aggression give you an insight that is very difficult and very important to understand as someone trained in executive protection. All right. From there, we'll go to cognitive aggression. And what do we see here? We see an individual becoming tactical. Now, if you're former military or law enforcement, you typically think this is well thought out, and it certainly can be. But that's not the context here. Here, we're talking about someone who has identified their target and is committed to the destruction of that target. And we can watch the body language and behavior early on as they prepare, go up through the stages of aggression as they prepare to effectuate their violence. At the 9th stage, we'll work from top and work our way down. At the 9th stage, we have the perpetrator of murder, suicide, or terrorist, or someone who intends to commit suicide. Fits in this bracket as well. We've already talked about that body language and behavior, but the sad fact is that most security and law enforcement, I tell them, you do not want to approach the 9th stage cognitive aggressor in uniform. Why? Because there's a high probability they will instantly start shooting, or if they have explosives, they'll either push that button or release that button, killing everybody in the blast range. You want to approach this person covertly. At the 8th stage, we have the murderer or combatant in a military sense, who is prepared to give up their life for a cause, but intend to survive. That changes their behavior. Whereas the 9th stage, their goal is to give up their life. Here, they will change their position. They will avoid security so they can better complete their mission. At the 7th level, we have what we call the complicit tactician. Completely complicit with the 8th and 9th level. They want certain people to die, but they're not actually going to kill them, nor are they going to put themselves that much at risk. Why? Because they're going to inspire other people to do this instead of themselves, like the late Osama bin Laden. And I can assure you the late Osama bin Laden did not want to die. Secondly, so uh, a terrorist handler or someone who is helping with logistics, that it helps, an accomplice. Each of these people are completely complicit with the eighth and ninth level, but they're not going to put themselves that much at risk. But here's the key. Each is a precursor to the next. It may only begin moments, but it gives you the ability to get out in front of the next. But here's the key, ladies and gentlemen. There's a sixth, a fifth, a fourth, a third, a second, a first, and a zero baseline. A zero baseline. So let's talk for a moment about where does aggression begin? Well, we can start over here. We've already talked about it. We've talked about how when we stop coping, that's when aggression begins on the primal aggression side. As long as people are coping, then everything is copacetic, right? And this is one of the reasons in our courses, we teach people what the Navy SEALs and Rangers all use, a thing we call cycle breathing, or some call it box breathing, that enables you to control your adrenaline rush. By controlling your adrenaline rush, you maintain your control, which enables you to effect the very best solution. So we help stop the escalation of primal aggression by teaching you the skill sets that are required to keep your calm. Now let's take a look at the other side. We talked about the difference between assertive behavior and aggressive behavior. I want to break this down for you. You see here on the left side, cognitive aggression versus assertive behavior versus aggressive behavior. I'm going to break this down even further. You're going to see the comparison here. Aggressive behavior has certain components that we can begin to see right away. As an example, if I say I'm going to win and I don't care what happens to you, that's being aggressive behavior at that lowest level. Remember, we talked about below the radar. You see, there's a wonderful old adage. It goes this way. It says, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. Caring is a very important quality in assertive behavior. So it is important for you to care. But first of all, before we get into that aspect here for a moment, let me just address one other thing. There is a misunderstanding, just like there is a misunderstanding about conflict resolution and sexual harassment, abuse, bullying, discrimination, and violence. Just as there's a misunderstanding about, there's also a misunderstanding about aggression itself. There is a belief that there is good aggression and there's bad aggression. You hear people telling others to go out and be aggressive, right? Whether it's sales or marketing or in sports and all that, they tell them to go out and be aggressive behavior. But if there is real, true, good aggression and bad aggression, where does good aggression end and bad aggression begin? Ladies and gentlemen, this is why we have a boxer who bit off another boxer's ear, right? This is why we have basketball players that throw chairs in the stands. This is why we have football players shooting and killing other people, because they cannot identify where good aggression ends and bad aggression begins. So we simplify this. We say that all aggression is destructive and negative, and that's what you're going to see here now. And if something is constructive and positive, it's assertive behavior, and we're going to describe that for you. So by your ability to distinguish between assertive behavior and aggressive behavior is a huge step towards identifying these bad behaviors, engaging and redirecting them before they become a problem. So let's go back to our example. If I say that I'm going to win and I don't care what happens to you, that is the beginning of aggressive behavior. It's way below the radar, but the moment you identify or ask yourself whether you're being the aggressor, you begin to realize you're stepping over the line into aggressive behavior. The next level is, I'm going to win, even though I know that it's going to harm you. That clearly is the next level of aggression, right? And the third level is, I live in a world where there are winners and losers. And by making you a loser, I become a winner. Isn't that obviously aggressive behavior? And by simply understand that analysis can help you be more caring, involved in other people, create win-win solutions. It also, a critical component, well, we're going to get into assertive behavior in a moment. Let's talk about the negativity of aggressive behavior. It's dominance, it's behavioral, it's manipulation, fear, deception, conflict, coercion. You know, in California, they consider workplace violence. Coercion is a softer form of workplace violence. So you're going to see more and more of this kind of language being used, and it's imperative to know that that's all aggression. Escalation, isolation, triviality, all of these things, victimization, all of these elements are elements that impede performance, productivity, profitability. They impede teamwork, leadership, and loyalty. So if you have an organization that is embodied by what you see here, it is impeding your ability to truly create the most effective performance, productivity, and if you have a profit-based company, profitability. Here's assertive behavior. What is it? Its foundation is trust. Trust is essential for teamwork, leadership, loyalty, performance, productivity, and profitability, right? Assertive behavior represents a trusting organization. That is finding things in common with your coworkers or your people in your family or people in your block by block, engaging with those people, finding the things in common and building on those commonalities. That's where you build rapport and trust, ladies and gentlemen, and that's how you demonstrate assertive behavior versus aggressive behavior. But if you don't understand these definitions, you cannot employ them. As we said, discipline, accountability, respect, transparency, ethics, all of those items that are so essential. Productivity, self-control, collaboration, loyalty. We have in a business world, we have a echelon of going ups and downs in our economy, don't we? We have ups and downs. And while things are going up, and if you're an employer and you want to keep your best employees, but one of the biggest things you have to worry about is your competitors trying to steal your employees, your very best employees, right? That happens all the time. And the more competitive your industry is, the more competitive you see this. So how can you assure that you keep your employees? Well, if you can say to your employees, our facilities are as safe as possible, the highest form of evidence-based best practices, that's something that builds loyalty to you. Abraham Maslow said it best when he created the hierarchy of needs. If people don't feel safe, nothing else is achieved. So by creating a safe and a caring and respected environment, all assertive behavior enable you to be the most productive, the most profitable, the most best teamwork, leadership, and loyalty. And that transition, what do we begin to see as they move from assertive to aggressive behavior? We start to see disconnections from our own group. This is what our instruction does. It teaches you all of this. It reduces empathy. Hidden resentments start occurring, deception, because they don't want you to know they're disconnecting from you, so they begin to deceive you. And then you get this whole deception that begins to build on top of everything else. Evidence-based best practices. Well, I had the honor of presenting at ASIS International, now called GSX, in 2016. And when I finished my presentation, I had hordes of directors of security, vice presidents of security, CEOs of guard companies come up to me and say, John, the most daunting day of the year for us is when we have to go to our CEO, or worse yet, CFO, or client, in the case of the CEOs, and convince that person that the money being spent on me and my team is worthwhile. Why? Because I'm forced to prove a negative. This goes for HR as well, same scenario. You have to prove a negative. Nobody's died, therefore all of this is worthwhile. Does that sell? No, especially when other departments are offering evidence-based best practices. So with CAPS, we're actually able to demonstrate with evidence-based best practices. How does that work? Well, we have Johnny. Johnny is an aggressor. And one of our first observers identifies Johnny at stage 3 and, of course, puts it in their app. It goes to the dashboard, then out to certified aggression managers. So we now see Johnny at stage 3. But remember, this is progressive. So we have another first observer identifies now Johnny at stage 4. What do we have? We have a trend, don't we? That's unheard of. To realize that someone is actually aggressing in a measurable, scientifically reliable way. Stage 5, someone else now notifies Johnny and finds him at stage 5. What do we have? We have someone on the path. Now, does that mean Johnny's going to be violent today or tomorrow? Not necessarily. But ladies and gentlemen, it creates the sense of urgency that has been absent in virtually every other program that's available today. Absent. Here, we see the sense of urgency. What happens typically? Someone sees something that is suspicious. What do? If I see it again, I'll report it then, right? That's the typical approach. And they forget the next time, or they don't remember the first time. Or I see something suspicious, then maybe tomorrow when I get to work, because I'm busy right now, I'll do something and report it, and they don't. Or they say, I'm in the midst of something. When I get done from this, then I'll report it, and they get distracted. So it never gets reported. In this system, you go right to your app. Remember, these are all scientifically reliable, so they're easy to choose from. They do not violate HIPAA, FERPA, the Civil Rights Act, or the European Union's GDPR. So it's very easy to go into the app. I'll show that to you and that process to you in a moment. Pick out, identify the level of aggression and get someone involved, and they're getting involved now. Not tomorrow, not an hour from now. They're getting involved with it now. It creates that sense of urgency, which is so essential, that is missing in all other systems. So what are we going to do now? Well, we're going to engage. Remember, we had first observers that are observing this behavior. You saw stages 3, 4, and 5. But now we're going to we're going to send in the cavalry. We're sending in the certified aggression managers. These are people further trained to not only engage, not only to diffuse, but to redirect. Now, let's explain that. Again, we understand there's assertive behavior and aggressive behavior. Need to understand that new paradigm now. Why? Because we're going to engage with Johnny. We're training these certified aggression managers to engage with Johnny and convince them that the path that they're on is an aggressive path. And because it's an aggressive path, it will have consequences. Consequences that he is not going to like. Remember, humans tend to do what they perceive as in their best interest. So we're going to train certified aggression managers to convince Johnny that this path that he's on has consequences he's not going to like. But then, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to redirect this Johnny. This is so very important. We're not going to redirect him to another aggressive path. We're going to now redirect him to an assertive path. Assertive path has no escalation or violence on it, does it? Now, this is going to address Johnny's issues, but it doesn't have any escalation or violence. It has no consequences on it. So Johnny is on this new path, not because I've asked him to, but because he doesn't want those consequences. But what can we say now? Think about this. We can now say that Johnny no longer has any intention to escalate and or cause harm to anyone else. Johnny no longer has an intent to do harm. Once we can say that Johnny no longer has an intent to do harm, ladies and gentlemen, that is a real-time data point. We have just prevented any subsequent escalation and or violence from Johnny. That is unheard of anywhere else on planet Earth. Now, let's take a look at the collective with this. We have 100 people go through this program. We have whether that's a workplace or whether that's a block by block society, a group of people. We have 100 people going through this program. Are we expecting to find 7, 8s, and 9s? Not really. Why? Because we identified them at 3, 4, and 5, and we redirected them, right? So they're no longer on that aggressive path. So we have prevented any subsequent escalation or violence from those people. So of those 100, we determined that 90 of them, and this is again the language, no longer have an intent to do harm. Ladies and gentlemen, that's your data point. 90% of these individuals no longer have an intent to do harm. So they're back becoming productive members of the team. Of the remaining 10, 5 are in counseling, and 5 have been suspended pending a more thorough investigation, so we can proclaim that our facilities are, as safe as possible, the highest form of evidence-based best practices. Let me just repeat that, because it is critical and it doesn't exist outside of CAPS. You can say that your facilities or your community is, as safe as possible, the highest form of evidence-based best practice. Now think about during the times that are really good times and you're trying to keep the very best of your employees, and you can say that our facilities are as safe as possible. What value does that bring to your organization? What value does that bring to your community as someone who would want to live in that community? How about workplaces? You're trying to take the employees from your competitors, the very best employees. And when you can make that statement, it means that people will feel safer, therefore they'll be more productive, they'll be wanting to come to work and enjoy a working environment. Human resources. Human resources are a member of this team. They've got to be a participant in it. So how do we engage them? Well, we've come to realize that there is one element that all organizations, all relationships require, whether they're personal, business, HR, security, whatever your realm of connection happens to be, communities, whatever they might be. There's one element for a relationship to be sustainable and genuine, and that element, ladies and gentlemen, is trust. That's assertive behavior, right? Is trust. So how do we demonstrate trust? Well, we know this is human resource. This is in the purview of human resources. Teamwork, leadership, loyalty, performance, productivity, and if it's profit-based, profitability. Each of these are enhanced. Now, there's a lot of organizations out there talking about trust, but there are literally no other metrics for trust. There's hundreds of metrics for performance, but none about trust. The only thing that I've been able to find of metrics out for trust is these lagging indicators where you survey people for competency, cooperation, elements like this, but now you're identifying only after the fact that there is no trust, or maybe there is a modicum of trust. Either way, they're not happening in real time. What we can do, ladies and gentlemen, is we can identify distrustful behavior. Let me repeat that. We can identify distrustful behavior. What is distrustful behavior? It's below the radar. It's all of that aggressive behavior below the radar that nobody else sees. It's very subtle stuff, but we're teaching people how to identify it, engage with, and utilize it to redirect people so they never actually get to conflict or aggression of any sort. One of the hottest topics on the planet today is cybersecurity. And I've had the honor over the last 4 years to be on the National Sheriff's Association's Cybersecurity and Crime Work Group. We have been exploring this problem, in my case, for over 4 years. Understand that I'm not a technical person, not a technician. I'm the behavioralist on this team. That's my role. And what we've come to realize is that we've had the elite of the elite come to present to us. Why? Because they'd like access to the team, to the sheriffs, and ultimately to the police chief as well. So we've seen the best of the best, and we've determined they're pretty darn good at keeping hackers out. But you know what they're abysmal at? They're absolutely horrible at identify an insider. An insider is someone who already has access and authority to the system, who a month ago was worthy of your trust, a week ago became disgruntled, or worse yet, compromised. And according to a 60-minute expose, China, more than all of our adversaries combined, are sending out these robots that are mechanical. Their objective is to engage with you based upon 7 degrees of separation. If they can compromise you, they can compromise people you know, and they can ultimately get to data and information that they want. And they're all mechanical. There are millions and millions of these going out. I get several a week, but if you touch any of them, if you engage in any way, you get a real human being engaging with you, trying to compromise you. And they're very good at doing that sort of thing. So how do you identify someone who a month ago was worthy of your trust, a week ago became disgruntled, or worse yet, compromised, and today intends to be treacherous? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's quite simple. We identify, remember again, below the radar, the things that nobody else is looking for. We're showing you how to identify it, engage, and diffuse it. We're identifying, because you see, we know that it is not instinctual for one human to attack another, right? You have to disconnect, depersonalize, turn this person into an object in order to attack them, unless you're a psychopath or a sociopath. You have to, and that's a small percentage of people. So you have to disconnect. Guess what? You will start showing signs of disconnection early on. Again, subtle signs, but we're teaching you how to identify it. Also, you will exhibit distrustful behavior. Once again, we're teaching people how to identify it, engage, and either redirect it so that you prevent the incident from occurring, or mitigating it, which hopefully they won't have to do that. That's very expensive. We told you that system is scientifically reliable. So this is the slide where I dedicate and talk about what that means and how we accomplished it. Well, the APA, the American Psychological Association, describes for something to be considered scientifically reliable, it must produce consistent and measurable results repeatedly over time. Here's what we did. We took this to Eastern Kentucky University, to their SAT team, their Student Assistant Intervention team. Dr. Good was the Vice President of Student Affairs and the chair of that team. And after 2 years of application, she wrote us this wonderful letter. The first paragraph is the most germane, so I'll read that to you. Now that we've had the critical aggression prevention system in place for 2 years, we're very pleased with its utility. The CAPS meter of emerging aggression, remember, that's the central analysis tool that tells us, yes, someone's been aggressive and at what stage or level they are, and I'm going to show that to you in just a moment, has produced evaluations and results that are consistent with the observations of our Student Assistant Intervention team, most of which had their PhDs. Ladies and gentlemen, that's scientific reliability. Now, she goes on to write that our campus legal counsel is very pleased that we're using the CAPS training and MEA software. Why? To record all information we're gathering and actions that we're taking in a clear, concise, and formal way. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Here it is. Very simple app. It's fully functional. Here's what we see. It forensically records and longitudinally tracks without violating HIP or FERP with the Civil Rights Act or the European Union's GDPR. It displays the level of aggression. Here you see, what we've done is we took that primal and cognitive aggression, we broke it down to 7 different categories: behavior, communication, interaction, demeanor, facial expressions, tactical movement, and other concerning factors. You go into any one of these and you start at 0 to 9 and you start looking. And when you observe what is corresponding to what you're observing, you select it. And again, it's very easy to do. Why? Because you know that these are scientifically reliable and they do not violate any of the privacy regulations. So the moment you pick one of those, what happens? It not only immediately gives you a number corresponding 0 to 9, what level of aggression, in this case it's 6, but it also color codes it. Green for low risk, yellow for moderate risk, red for high risk. So what does that produce for you? It produces in real time the totality of the circumstances. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, this is unheard of anywhere else. You get the totality of the circumstances right before your eyes so you can make the very best decisions. Next, it gives you the threat level. The threat level right down here, remember the meter of emerging aggression says the threat level is 6. Why? Because that's the highest level of threat. If you are prepared for the highest level of threat, you will not be caught off guard, you will not be blindsided, and you will be best prepared to engage with Johnny and get the very best results. First time. Because you have the opportunity to know what best to do for Johnny. We have recommended responses. Now, in 2 slides, I'm going to go into all the details about the training and why it's so important and what it actually does for you. Understand at this moment, you're fully trained and fully competent to be able to conduct this training. So, but let's say for an example, I'm going to use you, Andy, if I may. You're one of my certified aggression managers. The dashboard administrator, who's also a certified aggression manager, assigns you to engage with Johnny. You have some time. So what do? You hit this button right here, best practices for stage 6. And it instantly gives you a list of all of the best practices so that when you engage with Johnny, you are as good, as well, as best prepared to engage with Johnny and maximize your results. Again, unheard of on any other platform. Emergency procedures. The emergency procedures here are pretty good. They're Israeli, so they're very good. But if you have a client who wants their own in here, we're happy to put theirs in here for an upcharge. In general terms, what are we looking at? We have an army of first observers. You want them everywhere that you can afford to have them. In the state of California, where they passed California Senate Bill 553, every employee must have the baseline training. So in California, everyone will be trained. Who are these people? They're frontline observers. Yes, they can be part of your cyber team, security, human resources, receptionists. If you have a hospital, that information desk is filled with first observers. Everybody has to go by that information desk. They say something, they put it in an app, and immediately goes through the dashboard to all certified aggression managers. Why? Because aggression managers are further trained. They may know Johnny. Remember, we're not stepping on those landmines. So we can use this information that we've used before. So if it's Johnny again, remember the old saying is, if you sell someone once, it's 10 times easier to sell them a second or third time. Well, that's what we're going to do because we haven't used any of those, stepped on any of those landmines. We can use all of that information. We may use the very same person using the very same skill sets to engage with Johnny the second time. Who are these certified aggression managers? Well, we recommend a multidisciplinary team across the board. Human resource, security, risk management, mental health. I mean, everyone should be involved. EAPs, things of this sort, all should be involved in this process. Now, having said that, I haven't been to a college campus, and I've been to over 150. I haven't been to a large corporation where they have security capability, where the director of security hasn't pulled me aside and said, John, human resources, mental health, social services, they just don't get it. They don't understand and respect threat well enough. So we don't share everything we have with them. And when I've been training within that, when I go back in and I'm doing this in-person training on the site, usually it's a vice president of human resources, but mental health, social service, whatever, will pull me aside and say, John, we're a little concerned that security get too heavy-handed. So we don't share everything we have with them. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you know what that does? That creates departmental silos that create gaps that aggressors simply walk through with ease. CAPS is the only system that eliminates that. Why? Because everybody's using the same language, the same common denominator. At Eastern Kentucky University, the director of mental health was on our team. She could not and would not talk to us about mental illness or disorder, but she could and did talk to us about aggressive behavior. So suddenly we had a common language, common denominator. And when she would come in and say, I'm going to take this person down a different path, we didn't get all anxious about it, because too often in security worries that, or human resource worry that mental health can conflate mental illness with threat. And then this creates a whole new set of problems. We didn't worry about it in a moment. Why? Because the director of mental health was a certified aggression manager. So what do we have? We have threat assessment teams. We have behavioral intervention teams on college campuses, head nurses, department. We're not here to tell you who these certified aggression managers are. You tell us. Some people tell us we want all of them to be certified aggression managers. That's fine. You tell us who you want them trained, and we train them. Now we have an administrator. He assigns you to engage with Johnny. What are you going to do? Excuse me. What are you going to do? You're going to diffuse, you're going to redirect, you're going to conduct a judicious interview, and then what are you going to do? You're going to report. What did I see? How did I respond? What was the result? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a scientific process. Let me let that sink in for a moment. This is a scientific process. Now, one case, that's what we call them, cases, does not make validation. But 50 cases, 500 cases, 5,000 cases, you're building a validation that withstand any kind of scrutiny, legal or otherwise. And all of this is kept on the dashboard. Again, the meter of emerging aggression, which is a mobile device item. This is a computer-based item. That way you can share it with other people and that sort of thing. If you have more than one person, it's going to be in that posture. So let's take a look at this dashboard. All first observers go through the training. This is a half-day training, 4 hours, all online. You can do it in a half day, or you can do it over time at your own pace. Now, this is instructional design, adult learning. In other words, you are assessed all the way along as you learn the material, and then you're assessed at the end, and you have to pass an 80% or better score to be considered competent. Now, understand, remember, these are common sense precursors of human-based behavior. So they're easy. We've had no one not pass it yet, but if you have difficulty, you have 5 tries to pass this. But when they're done, you know beyond any shadow of a doubt they have an 80% score or better, so they are fully competent to affect this responsibility. Then you choose who are going to be your certified aggression managers. They go through a 1-day training. This is 7 hours of training. Again, all in 1 day or over a period at your own pace. Again, instructional design, assessed all the way along, then assessed at the end. You must pass 80 score or above. Again, easy to do, but you're assessed all the way along. So you're not just having a test at the end, you're being tested all the way along. So again, everybody has an 80 or plus score. So you know that everybody is competent within your system. Existing cases are all in this system. Here they are. They're all color coded. So your eyes go right to where they need to be for what priority: green for low risk, yellow for moderate risk, red for high risk. This is what your certified aggression manager data, your dashboard administrator sees. They hit this button, view the details, and they see the meter of emerging aggression with all of its information and all the logistical information: who's involved, where did it happen, timing, and all that sort of thing. Then they assign one or more people to engage with Johnny, and then their findings go here. So all of this system is coming into the administrator. Then the next step is actions taken. So actions taken. This is a time and date stamped system where you put in everything, a narrative: what happened, who's involved, all the details of it, what have you done, how are you proceeding forward. And if we decided, as an example, Andy, that Johnny was going to go get mental health counseling over this next week or two, so 3 weeks from now, we want you to re-engage with Johnny, make sure that he's still on that assertive path, and make sure you conduct a judicious interview, so you get an alert. Incidentally, this whole system is based upon email alerts. You put nothing in the email, no private information is in that email. It takes you to your dashboard where all the information is in that dashboard. So it's all secure. But you receive a notice, an email notice, an alert, and you go with all the instructions you need right on the dashboard. So it gives you the ability to engage with Johnny, schedule that, and then come back and report. So we have this ongoing narrative. And there's your reminder there. In 3 weeks, you'll receive your email alert and you engage with Johnny and go from there. So the problem we have with systems today is that they're too subjective. They're also built on fear because, let's face it, remember, if you're reacting, you already have a victim, you already have a perpetrator. This system that they're doing, the conflict resolution and all these other systems, are all punitive systems, aren't they? They're designed to identify an offender and punish that offender. Where the CAP system is rehabilitative. It's designed to identify, get out in front. So let's say in Johnny's case, and because of Johnny in the old case, the standard today, once Johnny is punished, who's he looking for next? The guy that turned him in, right? Hence the more reason why people don't see something and say something. In our system, Johnny's thankful because he doesn't have those consequences because you turned him in. So he's happy you turned him in because otherwise he'd have all those consequences. So it completely turns that paradigm on its head. That's one of the reasons for this change. So actual workplace violence requires early engagement, but far less of it because we're dealing with less of it because we're engaging early and preventing it from occurring. Current systems are, again, all reactive. Mental health is none of these are reliable, right? Mental health is not reliable. See something, say something is not reliable. The current programs react, they don't prevent. Active shooter response is the most egregious of them all. Why? Because it presupposes an active shooter already murdering your employees or your community. It is the most egregious of them all. Run, hide, fight is not a prevention strategy. It is a reactive strategy, and a sad one at that. Where CAPS in the state of California, which has Senate Bill 553, where all employees with 10 or more employees must train all people with as base level training. And if you take action against an employee, there is no privacy. You have to give everything that you have, not only to the employee, but to the employee's representative, their attorney. CAPS is the only system that you can give everything to them because we're not stepping on any of those landmines. Everybody else is saying, oh God, what's going to happen? Because they're going to see that we've been stepping on these privacy regulations. With CAPS, we're not doing so. So you can share everything with them. Our system is the only system that is fully compliant with California Senate Bill 553. The state of New York is now coming up with a plan that's very similar, and you're going to have northern states going into these plans all the way across. CAPS is the only system, for all the reasons we mentioned, that is compliant. It is scientifically reliable. It's founded in science. It is intuitive, easy to use, inexpensive to use, excuse me just a moment, and fully scalable. So no matter whether you have a large contingent of employees in one location or people in society, block by block, or you have them spread all over the world, it doesn't matter, because it doesn't matter what culture you're dealing with. These are all human-based indicators. So every other program out there, you have victims and you have perpetrators, right? Because they're all reacting. CAPS is the only system that enables innocent people not to become victims. It is the only system that enables aggressive people not to become perpetrators and destroy their lives as well. And it saves employers enormous amounts of money that otherwise they'd have because they've got a victim and a perpetrator. The moment you decide you're going to need to fire or terminate someone, you have a whole legal process you must incorporate. If you don't have your own lawyers, you're going to pay through the tooth. Secondly, you have security problems. And if you don't have your own security, you're going to pay very big dollars. And it just doesn't work for a day. And for that hour, because too often we have people that come back 6 months from now and start murdering people. And you now have to replace that person. So you now have to go out and find a comparable person and hire that person. That can be very expensive. And if it's a higher echelon person, you're also going to have to train someone. And they're going to lose all that productivity during the interim. That there's an enormous cost. That with CAPS, you save all of that cost. That, ladies and gentlemen, is my program. I'm happy to answer any questions that people might have.
Sir,
Yes, your mic is still on. You have two microphones, so one of them should open. Sal, we can start with you if you have any questions. My pleasure. My pleasure.
so okay. I apologize for that.
That's right. You've got a loop here.
I need to do more isolation. Can you hear me right now?
Yes.
Thank you. So, sir, thank you. This was a long time in the making that I can actually invite you to talk like this super openly, super freely, and I do appreciate it. The power of the knowledge. Hopefully, it's gonna be something that we can share with more people. I told you from the very get-go, one of my products, that Community in a Box, I need to find a way to put your systems, your technology in that product. I'm taking that product to the villages right now, chambers of commerce, because of the AI consultancy that I have been doing for about last year. I see so many great opportunities and potential to really explain it like you are doing. Within an hour, you were able to explain this very, very complicated concept. And that's what we do with the AI practice. You know, it's a roadmap that we are setting up for the organizations. And it is very, very similar path but it's mindset change for the leaders. And that's the most important aspect of what I really want to revigorate and really ensure that anyone that will have a chance, because I will send that presentation, sir, to a lot of people as part of the proposals. I don't see any other path of doing this to ensure that this knowledge sticks. And we will have a really, really clear statements of how that can be done now. I really want to just ask you, because last time when we spoke, you were still going through your certification program with Harvard. Can you
Yes.
just talk about this
Sure,
body of
sure.
knowledge? What did you
It,
learn?
it,
Because
it really
I'm
is.
a,
Yeah.
obviously person that's been educating myself my whole life,
Right.
and I'm gonna say it loudly.
Well, and if if you're not educating yourself, you're divorcing. You're dwarfing your capabilities. Clearly, I was again. I'm on this National Sheriff's Association Cybersecurity and Crime Work Group, and the vice chair is a graduate from Harvard, both the business school and the law school, and a brilliant, off the charts brilliant guy. And he was telling me about these 8 certificates that Harvard's business school, their um, it's the Digital Data Design Institute, subset of the business school, was putting on. And so I went and took these 8 and got these 8 certifications on all aspects of AI. But once again, you can't stop there. You have to keep learning. So I'm excited about participating with you to learn even more about AI, because it doesn't matter where you get it from. I mean, yes, um, uh, it's wonderful to have 8 certificates from Harvard, um, which I'm honored by. But you've got to keep learning. And if you stop learning, you start dying, in my view. So I'm very excited about working with you and getting even more knowledge about how to actually apply all this wonderful. But for me, it's been transformative. I mean, there isn't a part of the day that I don't use AI in some form or fashion. Um, I mean, it's the capability it brings us as an employer who doesn't want to hire, 100 employees. They want to stay small. Ask any employer, what is the biggest problem? Employees. What's the most expensive thing and what's the biggest problem? Employees. So if we're able to build and keep hiring employees to a minimum, then that's a positive thing. And this system enables us to do it. And it enables us to be the best version of ourselves.
I'm gonna share the curriculum with you, sir, over the next 2 weeks. I am gonna put up the cohort creation is really, I think that's gonna be the simplest way to get a group of leaders and maybe some crazy people like me, visionaries that think it can be achieved, it can be done, and we can almost give it away for free to those people. But yeah, it needs to be implemented right. So we need to be driving some specific vehicle to ensure that distribution is done right. And I'm so happy that that we'll be able to do that. More information will be coming, but I will also invite you to that community that I have built. So the community now is taking place within the like a circle interface. I got other different communities with a lot of already a lot of materials. The problem is with the AI, it changes every month. It
Mhm.
changes
That's
completely.
why they have to keep up, have to keep
Yeah.
up.
So keeping up is really what we are doing within those hubs, right? I'm operating right now. Probably I call it 4 clusters that like swarms of agents that have a specific functions. But I do that maybe mainly for the investments, other businesses that I got involved over many years. Consultancy and business advisory is absolutely a way for me to embed that super clear blueprints, strategies, and your solutions stick to probably to those individuals that understand that you can do it now without running on the same systems that hinders your operations within the organization. So creating new systems, new pathways, and new roadmaps for the organizations is really what we're gonna be doing.
Having said that, what all that you've said sounds very lofty. However, for people, any business person that's watching this, for them to say, is this something for me? The question is, and I love using this example because it's relevant to me, and I'm sure it's relative to virtually every other entrepreneur on the planet or major management level person on the planet. Approximately 90% of most companies operate on the basis of that process. 90% of most companies, it boils down to process. And most process, 90% of it, can be achieved with AI. That's profound. That explanation is profound for any entrepreneur. And that's where I'm getting the ability to build the playbooks, not just clone, but build the playbooks and build the system. So it's literally talking to you. It's going out and doing these activities for you and reporting back to you. And if you permit it and you feel it's got your voice enough, and it will, if you give it a chance, it'll interact with other people and just let you know what the results were. So as a business person who thinks in a business-like way, how many of my process can I engage with AI and have it do those as if they were an employee, and do that with a certain level of perfection because they learn also by error and they adapt. So they literally are doing so much of what we would normally do today, which enable us to use that time that we spend in the mundane. Everybody says, what are you paid per hour? Why are you doing something that's someone who's getting paid a tenth of what you get paid to do? Why are you doing that stuff? Well, AI can do it for you at no cost, except the initial cost of having the AI and the learning process you have to go through to get to that level. So I believe that any entrepreneur, any top level manager that is listening and seeing and hearing our, if you will, podcast that we're doing at this point.
And I think, sir, yeah, that's what I'm gonna call it. I think it's gonna be Friday evening podcasts, really for the professionals, because that's what I was building, and that's where I'm going. Really, the Friday evening conversations sometimes are gonna be fantastic. I'm not going out, on Friday evenings myself. I would rather and be involved in a right, thoughtful conversations.
Sure.
So we can take care of more humans, because that's what we're really doing over the last few years. Looking at new opportunities. I've been interviewing a lot, right? I was not specifically keen on getting another position. For me, creating new businesses and creating opportunities for others and doing the advisory work to individuals that I hope that will go through the process. You will be able to really build all that stuff the way that your vision is there. And I will help you how to do it with the tools that are now available, fully isolated. We'll go through the full roadmap. So nothing is lost in a translation, because the IP protection, the really rights protection, that is what is I think all about. I'm looking very closely at the legislative process.
So when are you going to begin this process of instruction? Because the people that'll listen to this
Yeah.
are going to be asking the same question.
Really the easiest way is to get into the community that we created. You can definitely reach out directly to Dr. John. I have a simple email for the support. So it's support@pureexpertz.com, but the community is where everything lives. So right now we created a website. URL is community.pureexpertz.ai, and everyone is invited. This is a free entry point. Obviously, this is also a place where we figure out who is the operator, who is the business owner, and if they really want to get through some kind of transformation, or are they even ready? If they are not ready, we got plenty of modules over there to get that knowledge quickly.
Sure.
And starting next week, I'm really kicking off again with the workshops. So those are really opportunities, open office hours type of
Is my slide still up?
Yeah.
So
it's
people, I mean, my email address, my telephone number is there for anybody who wishes to reach out to me. So I'm happy to.
And I know that Sal is gonna say in a second, where's the QR code? Yes, we're gonna add the QR code
Sure.
over there, Sal. Okay.
Sure. Yes.
So I really want to, it's already 5 p.m. I was prepared to go a little bit longer today because I really didn't want to disturb you, sir, because I think the keynote is the fully packaged thing. It's hard to break it because if you're gonna go only for 30 minutes, it's not gonna reach that momentum in humans' understanding of, whoa, well, that's the flip side. Yeah, I can prevent violence that even happens before. It's fantastic. So I cannot say thank you enough, and I'm looking forward to the next engagements real soon.
Sounds great. Thank you very much, and have a great weekend.
Alrighty, thank you.
My
So
pleasure.
I'm gonna finish that today as well, and tomorrow I'm gonna do one more that we're still gonna be broadcasting. So that's gonna be day 3. Again, for me, day 3 is really talking about investments and talking about what we are building. So you understand how I intend to deploy the community in a box with those solutions that are kind of embedded. So we're creating new organizations, we're creating new businesses that are leveraging those solutions, or we just give them to the rightful owners that would like to leverage those solutions. So that's how I really look at it. So thank you very much, and yeah,
have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sal.
So Sal, I'm gonna really